This is the Philanthropy Show, connecting and inspiring philanthropy.
Hello and welcome to the Philanthropy Show. I'm your host, Luann Saraga Walters. A question you may have asked for your nonprofit organization is, when can we start bringing in some planned giving? Well, how about right now? Yes, it is never too soon. It is never too late to start down that path. With us today, we have two wonderful guests who are going to help us break through this subject, which can seem a little bit thick. So, it's like wading through this unknown world. Beverley McLain, Senior Vice President of Philanthropic Services at the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay, and my former boss. So glad to have you on here. It is a joy.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And you're just going to enlighten us, I know, because you have a lot of great information, as well as Sara Leonard, whom you all probably recognize formerly from the Nonprofit Leadership Center as the director of the Fund Development Academy there, right? And also now owner, operator, magnificent extraordinaire of Sara Leonard Group. So is this your first media presentation as Sara Leonard Group?
This is my first media presentation, and I'm happy that it's on the Philanthropy Show with you.
Oh, thanks. Well, we'll love having you guys on, and this is just going to be a fun chat with us, diving into a kind of complicated subject for some folks. It can be. So before we get too into it, give me just kind of an overall reason for launching into planned giving. What's the good parts of it that people kind of hesitate to really go into? The good stuff of planned giving. Obviously, getting your nonprofit out of having to do the fundraising year after year, but
one of the things that I've said to people who have contacted the Community Foundation on how to get started is that the easy thing can be the gifts that come in that you don't have anything to do with. You may not even know about them. So those are the bequests. And
those
I think
are good days.
Those are good days. And I think Sara has some information about that also.
Those are happy dance days at a nonprofit. Another good thing that I want to talk about is it's good for the donor because it allows a donor who might not be able to make a large gift right now with the money in their checking account. It allows them to make a very large gift because it's a gift of assets, meaning it's a gift of the things we've accumulated over our lives. And it's a way for a person to live out that passion even after they're gone.
So that is richly a rich point that I want to get into in a couple of minutes. But first, I want to go into kind of your backgrounds with this. How does the Community Foundation play a part? And I know community foundations across the land are all different setups, right? I think you have a saying. If you've seen
one community foundation, you've seen one community foundation. Right.
But so how does the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay play a role in planned giving, and what is the organization about?
Great question. And we do it in a number of different ways. And one of the ways is actually a refinement of my role at the Community Foundation, where I used to wear several hats, and now I've honed onto working with just professional advisors, because those are the individuals, those are the professionals who are going to be referring their clients and talking to their clients about planned gifts. So we enter the picture for some of the finer details about the charitable component, but a lot of planned giving is done, it comes later, and the planning part is what involves the professional advisor. So we could be talking about different varieties of trusts, for example, and you need an expert to set those up. So the Community Foundation, my job is to work with attorneys and CPAs and wealth managers and trust officers to educate them, to inform them about how the Community Foundation works with them in partnership with their clients. And the relationship is always one in which we will honor their relationship with their client and have that conversation about charitable giving and the benefits that can come from it.
And you get set up really because the Community Foundation is about perpetuity. It is about long-term giving.
In many ways it is.
And it's not necessarily based on what many nonprofits are, which is going from one year to the next.
Right.
Because the endowments are created. Those are more long-term ideas.
Right.
And that's where your expertise comes in as well, because in addition to working with these professional advisors, you're really helping nonprofits. I mean, I know that you've gone to different nonprofit organizations and helped them figure out.
Yes. I've had several conversations over the past couple of years where they will call the Community Foundation and ask for help in getting a planned giving program started. And this has ranged from very large organizations who have not done any of it to much smaller organizations. And the first step that I inspire people to do is find out who has already named you in their bequest or in their trust documents, and start with a legacy society. That's where I tell them to always start. And the best story I have to tell is the one of an organization 2 years ago that came to me with this question, and were able to identify and document 4 individuals that they knew had put this organization into their estate plans. And
wow.
over the course of
But they thought they didn't have anybody.
They thought they didn't have anybody. They did identify 4, but in the 2 years since then, they just had their first Legacy Society luncheon, and 25 people were identified.
That's fantastic.
So they've gotten started, and it'll never go anyplace without the ask. So you have to start asking people, either do you have us in your plans, or would you be willing to put us in your plans?
And that can be a difficult thing. And I know you have spoken to that with the Fund Development Academy, and now also with the Sara Leonard Group, Sara Leonard Group, with how to encourage nonprofits to have that conversation.
Right.
That fearless fundraising element.
Right.
How does somebody go about doing that?
Well, and I think some of the calls Beverly has gotten at the Community Foundation are from students at the Nonprofit Leadership Center, because one of the things we tell them is you're not in this alone. There's lots of help out there. You just have to ask for it. So a nonprofit organization, just like with any fundraising, they need to start talking about it and asking. And one of the questions I get is, where will we find donors who can do this? Well, the answer is you've already met them, because it's the people who fund you year after year who are most likely to make a planned gift for you, because they understand your mission and they're passionate about what you're doing. And it's an opportunity for them to give a bigger gift or a longer term gift and live out their own passions.
Now, what is your background with that, Sara? Are you a CFRE? Are you?
I am. I've been a CFRE for a number of years, and
I say that, I just said the initials
Okay.
out there, but some folks may not know what that is.
It stands for Certified Fundraising Executive. It's it shows my scope of work, and then I've been fundraising for a long time. And I have to say, I am not a planned giving expert. This sounds like one of those, this should not be construed as legal advice. But that's okay, I think, because most fundraisers are intimidated by planned giving. They think they have to be a planned giving expert. They don't. They need to be an expert on their organization's mission and what their organization can do with a donor's investment. And then if that's the right thing for a donor, if a planned gift is where the conversation goes, that's when they can get help.
I want to tell you one of the things I love about Sara. She and I have discussed this recently. A key element in any kind of fundraising, but in particular planned giving, is listening. And it's also important for what you're listening for.
Right.
But being able to be silent and have your donor be in front of you face to face and have them be telling their story such that you're then listening for the opportunity to say, this might be something where there's a tax benefit, or this might be something where you could assist with dollars into the future for a particular program that we'd like to get started.
You're talking about relationships.
We are absolutely talking about
By saying that.
relationships.
Absolutely relationships.
And I think that you both have touched on it, and we did an aha at the beginning about, it's a great day when you have something that has been bequeathed come in, but it's also a sad day because that means somebody has passed away. And I think that's the scary part of that conversation that you have with a relationship, is that you're having to have a conversation about, Sara, I know that, I don't know if you've thought about this, but when you're not here anymore, I mean, that really is a scary thing to have to talk to somebody about.
I know you're going to die is something we don't want to open a conversation
But
with.
hello, that's true about every person on this planet.
And I read
yet,
once that Americans will say, when I win the lottery and if I die. Like they have those two reversed, because it's really if I win the lottery, and the odds are slim, and when I die, and that's going to happen for everybody. And one thing, once you get to know a donor, many people are comfortable with that, because you get to a certain point in your life, and I think the research says it's when you have children that you start thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to do something about this, and you make a will and you start thinking about your estate plan. And then for other people, it's a different point in their life, but at some point, maybe 40s or 50s, we all start thinking about what's going to happen to my money when I'm gone.
I think that's true.
And we'll change the conversation also by saying, instead of talking about death and dying, we talk about leaving your legacy, leaving your mark, leaving something behind for you to be remembered, if that's important to you. Our new understanding also, by the way, is that millennials don't feel that way so much. So the people—
They're young yet.
They are young yet. Well, but what we do know is
As a
that—
Gen Xer, I'm saying.
Yeah, people in the boomer generation and the silent generation, they have that as a value. They would like to be remembered. So we talk to them in those terms. What kind of legacy? Or you're making an annual gift to your favorite nonprofit. How would you like to continue that annual gift into perpetuity?
Those are all good points, and actually you said something else that I want to dive into as well, is how to get into talking with each individual at that relationship level about the proper or appropriate vehicle, planned giving vehicle. So we'll get a little bit more into that, but already time, we must take a break. So we're going to take a quick break on the Philanthropy Show, and we will be back right after these words from our sponsors.
This show sponsored in part by
My Paper Pusher. Consider it done.
Follow the Philanthropy Show on Facebook for behind-the-scenes action, polls, and commentary.
Welcome back to the Philanthropy Show. We're talking today about planned giving. When is it right, which I think we've established is now, anytime is the right time to start talking about planned giving. And then how do you know which vehicle to go with? And how do you approach a donor? Is it that responsibility? So let's talk a little bit about that, because we have, first off, a variety of vehicles. Help me name some. We've got
Charitable gift annuities,
charitable gift annuities,
charitable lead trusts,
charitable lead trusts,
Wills.
wills, life insurance policies,
IRAs, charitable remainder trusts.
So we're thinking of anything that would have a beneficiary is a planned giving tool, basically. It could be. And I know I'm simplifying it a little bit.
Yeah.
So how do you decide, or do you decide, how do you approach the donor, how do you speak with the donor about these different vehicles?
And I think that's where a lot of people get intimidated, and they then make a plan, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to talk to people about charitable gift annuities, and I'm going to make 6 calls and have 10 visits, and I think that's—
And I have to become an expert in it.
Right. That is the complete opposite. I think as nonprofit employees and board members and volunteers, we go out and we listen to the people that are involved in our organization. And we listen, and you can comment on what we listen for, but we listen for the things that are challenging them and the things that are important to them. So
well, and
what
one
do you
comment
hear
I
when
would
they
make,
speak?
one of the things that we hear is that they've got money invested in CDs, as an example, and they might be talking as part of their conversation about how they just can't get the same returns as they were able to get in '81. So in '81, we know that there was like a 14% return that was coming back on a lot of investments. Not true any longer. That's a point where an introduction to a charitable gift annuity can be offered. And a lot of that conversation can take place around what kind of return they can get. So it gets technical, but the listening piece is first. And then one of the pieces, I don't have all the rates memorized, but I can tell you that for a 76-year-old, they can generate 6% a year annually. So if their gift annuity was $100,000 and that came from a CD that might have been paying 1.2%, they can convert that $100,000 to a gift annuity and know 3 things. They can get an immediate tax deduction, they can get a rate of 6% or $6,000 a year as income, and the peace of mind and joy, and this is where that listening comes in, and the element of communication that's at the relationship and not the technical level comes in. The joy of knowing that when they pass, the balance in that account is going to go to benefit the nonprofit organization that they have designated. And that's the beauty of that kind of a gift, much more so.
And or a nonprofit, and maybe they have children or something that they want to split that up. Is that a possibility?
We can do
beneficiaries?
We can do 2 life beneficiaries.
Okay.
But ultimately only 1 charitable beneficiary,
Okay.
typically.
Well, and I think you made a good distinction, too. You're talking about relationship versus technical.
Yeah.
And I know from your background, because you and I share this, being professional advisors.
Yes.
And
yes.
having passed that Series 7 and that
And
kind
63.
of fun stuff. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, don't remind me of that. But many nonprofits don't have a professional advisor on their staff. But like you said, to your point, you work with the professional advisors who work with the client.
Yes.
And that relationship is also an essential one in talking with your donor about planned giving.
Right, and we're not asking a donor to give us all of their money instead of leaving it to their family.
Right, never.
And donors don't do that. They
Never.
will leave something for a nonprofit and take care of their families in the way that they want to.
Yeah, and I think that again, there's a lot of fear around this. I'm just discovering in this conversation the fear of, do I know as much as I need to know? How do I even start this conversation? And if we can just break it down to it's a relationship, all those fear-based questions just kind of go out the window.
Yes.
So as an organization, I'm Nonprofit ABC, which is my favorite nonprofit to use. That's my coined nonprofit for this show. And I'm thinking of, how do I find out about, number one, how many people currently have us in their will or as a beneficiary in some vehicle? How do I have that conversation? Do I do it one-on-one? Do I have a big gathering of some of my donors, maybe?
I can tell you one technique, and it happens to be the technique that the Community Foundation used and that we now have passed along to other organizations that ask us. And the technique involves creating an event and crafting a letter to invite. And what we did was all of our donor base, we invited them to this event, and it was going to be our Legacy Society event. And in the invitation letter, we said, there's a sheet of paper included in this invitation with the list of our current Legacy Society members. Please check to see that your name is spelled correctly. And if your name is not on the list, on the third sheet, which is your RSVP document, if you would indicate how you would like your name to be included. And on that document, you'll also see, I'd like to be a member. I'm not yet, but I'd like to be. So those 3 documents were mailed out, and the increase to our Legacy Society was tremendous. I don't have the percentage off the top of my head, but we went from maybe 65 people to 120, so almost doubled. And part of it is because we sent it out to everybody. We sent it to everybody.
Well, the hope there, too, is in that increase that this is then a promise that the donor is making to fund the organization upon their transition, their passing.
Right.
But how do you track that? I mean, because you really could change
They
the
can
beneficiary
change.
information
They can
anytime,
change.
right?
I recommend always starting with the people closest to you. Start with your board members, your senior staff, and then the next group you would go to are the people who've been supporting you the longest. So it wouldn't necessarily be the largest gift, but it would be a person who's given you $25 every year for 10 years, or $100 several times a year every time we ask. Those are the kind of people you want to reach out to first. And how do you know? Well,
You either have a good Excel spreadsheet,
right,
or have a good contact management database.
Absolutely, which you should be tracking somehow.
And from a CEO or an executive director standpoint, what I was just thinking as you were saying that is, very often there's a high turnover rate in the nonprofit sector. So somebody has established this Legacy Society tracking, but then how do we continue that going? So this really is something that needs to be embraced really at the upper management level, so that the next person who comes in and does that tracking can pick up where they leave off, and you don't lose this information, because it's not in the past. And so from an accounting standpoint, accountants will like, well, that's not real money yet because it hasn't come in, right? And I'm just speaking very broadly with that. But from a tracking standpoint, you have to know what that is so that you can have your Legacy Society luncheons.
Right.
You can continue, pursuing XYZ. So what happens when that legacy comes in?
The happy dance?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you want Beverly to demonstrate that? So we're just talking figuratively. What do we do?
Figuratively, yeah. So coming full circle with that, now you've set up your Legacy Society. I guess the point behind that question is, now that you have something come in, are there plans in place from a nonprofit standpoint to give a plaque to?
Well,
how do we
sometimes
recognize
there
that?
are and sometimes there aren't. A huge benefit of having a Legacy Society is it opens up the conversation. And so there are less surprises, even the happy surprises, and you can talk to the family before the person passes away and say, where do you want this money to go? And And what will we be doing with it?
Perfect.
And then you can also have the recognition conversation.
That's
Will we
part
name
of that
something?
conversation,
Will
though.
we
I
put a
think
plaque?
that's my point for that, because it's not just about where do you want your money to go, but there are donors who may not want to have recognition of it.
That's right.
Right, and so we want to be able to honor that as well.
Right.
So it's
And
like a
from
two-pronged conversation.
From the organization's perspective, now is the time to have gift acceptance policies that address planned gifts. So it takes the surprise out of the surprise, and some organizations choose to put all planned gifts into an endowment fund, or leave it more open-ended and they'll decide and a portion goes into an endowment fund. But that allows you to know what to do when that money gets there, besides the
Right.
happiness.
And a lot of the bequests that come in, I know, to the Community Foundation, a lot of them are what we refer to as unrestricted. So that allows our grants committee the leeway. They've actually been entrusted with making the determination about where those grants are going to go, which is a very important consideration for anyone when you're talking about any kind of giving. The unrestricted gift, from the organization's point of view, is the most beneficial because none of us knows what the circumstances are going to be in our society 20 years from now, 30 years from now. So an unrestricted gift is given the leeway to address those kinds of things that are going to show up.
That made me think of one other point, too, before we go to our next break, and that is, what if the donor has just a slight hesitance and wants to make sure, knowing that in the future maybe this organization won't even be around? What do they do in that case to be able to say, well, I want to leave this to you, and can they? Can they say, in the case of this organization going out of existence, then I would like the remainder of this? Or can they protect, I mean, how can, is that a possibility?
Well, at the Community Foundation, that is addressed up front, because if they have a fund agreement with us, we have this thing that's allotted to us called variance power. And it is, we are charged with finding the next closest organization with that similar mission.
And that's why an organization like a community foundation, and there are a number of organizations, local and national, who will help with that. And it gives the donors some guarantee that the money will be used as they intend it to be used, regardless of what happens with the specific nonprofit or the cause, because some diseases are cured and
Hopefully, yes.
some issues are solved.
Right.
And having your money at a place like a community foundation allows guarantee beyond that.
Yeah, and thank you both for saying that, because while this speaks to those nonprofits right now who are really looking at planned giving, it also speaks to the donors who are watching, who may be thinking, gosh, I'd really like to be able to support, you know, my favorite charitable organization, but what if? And not knowing how to bring that question up. So thanks for providing that. It is time now to take our second break. So we're going to do that, and when we come back, Sara and Beverley will take part in Truth or Care. We'll be right back with the Philanthropy Show.
And now a word from our studio sponsor.
Hi, I'm Jen Dodd with the Nonprofit Leadership Center of Tampa Bay. I'm the education manager here, and I'm often asked, should my nonprofit have a blog? The answer to that is always yes. The next question is generally, so what do I blog about? Well, think of it this way. Your blog is a way to regularly update your content on your website to keep it fresh for your visitors and to keep you relevant in web searches. So a blog post should be an update of your programs, services, and events, or a way for your donors and volunteers to plug into your mission. Don't forget to tell them how they're impacting others. If you're absolutely stumped for what to blog about, take a look at your press releases for inspiration. If you wanted the public and the media to know about it, it's probably blog-worthy. Here at the Nonprofit Leadership Center, we use our weekly blog to share educational information and best practices with the nonprofit sector. Check it out at www.nonprofitleadershipcenter.com.
The Philanthropy Show is on demand every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at both thephilanthropyshow.com and YouTube/WatchMVVP TV.
Welcome back to the Philanthropy Show. Wow, third segment, Truth or Care. Here we are with Beverley McLain, Senior Vice President of Philanthropic Services at the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay, and Sara Leonard, owner of the Sara Leonard Group. Fabulous, giving their thoughts today on planned giving. Thanks for everything that you have shared. It has been, I think, very valuable to, as we said before the break, both the nonprofit staff and the donor and the board member. So we're just hitting all three of our audiences with today's show. It's a trifecta. We love it. So I wanted to wrap up the show. Every show we do Truth or Care, which is your heart's definition of philanthropy. So we've kind of reviewed a little bit, and I'm going to let the fickle finger of fate go unless somebody just wants to go first. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Okay, we'll start with Sara.
Well, I have worked in the nonprofit sector for 25 years. I had one miserable year in banking and realized pretty quickly that that wasn't the right fit.
Okay.
So it's always been my career, and I've loved it. But about 3 years ago, my family went through some tough days. We had 2 significant losses, and we went so quickly from supporting the nonprofit community to benefiting from the nonprofit community. And then not long after that, I was at the Nonprofit Leadership Center taking a class, actually watching a class, and I realized there were 2 hospices, which is the nonprofits that helped us through our tough year. Both of my alma maters, my undergrad and my graduate, my husband's employer at the time, and I thought, wow, this nonprofit sector, which we talk about as a thing, is really made up of a whole bunch of wonderful people who are there and were there for my family when we really needed it and helped my husband, myself, but most especially my children through a really terrible time. And so I love the nonprofit sector, and most of all, I love the people I get to work with.
That's so cool, because you're talking about this is a personal heart connection to, like you said, we call it the nonprofit sector, this industry, and yet it is about that people connection. We had a guest on several times ago, Liz Wooten-Reschke, who said, gave a demonstration of, I've been involved in nonprofits my entire life.
Sure.
From having been born in a hospital to going through brownies and Girl Scouts and then, your schools and whatnot, and like you just said, even end of life.
Right.
Nonprofit organizations that are there to help. It really is about our whole being, that whole lifespan, not just something that we're giving to. I love how you just put that into perspective. Thanks a lot for sharing that, Sara.
You're welcome.
That's wonderful. Miss Beverley.
Well, for me, for those people who know me, won't be surprised at this, it's all about the feeling. So I've not had exposure to the nonprofit community, not growing up, and not in my work life. I went through a lot of for-profit organizations that I worked for. And the feeling that I had, however, when I taught school in my early life career, actually got duplicated when I started working at the Community Foundation. So the feeling that I'm talking about is the satisfaction, the reward, the caring that I get to express and that gets expressed back when I'm in a mode of being able to give and share of myself. So when we talk about listening with donors, although I don't set out to make any cry, but when they do, to know that I have touched or been instrumental as a part of touching something that's important to them.
Yeah.
So every day when I get up now at the Community Foundation, I know that the time I spend, and even if it's writing a report, just the overall picture, the time I spend in the work that I do touches so many people in so many ways that I don't know of a better job that I could possibly have. So
that's cool. And you're one of those rare people who takes each moment. You've got busy work all day long.
Yeah.
But Beverley is really good at, in that specific moment, being able to, with gratitude, say, this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it. And you taught me that during my time at the Community Foundation. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And thank you for sharing this. Thanks for coming on the show today.
My pleasure.
Wonderful to have you
Thanks
both.
for having me.
Yay, and congratulations, Sara Leonard Group.
Truly.
Thank you.
We'd love to have both of you back again, and I'd love to see you up and around doing your thing.
Congratulations. Sara Leonard.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. Yes, then this is a great tie, because now this is your former employer, the Nonprofit Leadership Center of Tampa Bay, of which you are a board member.
Yes.
So it's just,
Yes.
we're a big happy family here. We just love it all. Thank you so much for joining us on the Philanthropy Show. Be sure to tune in to all the shows that we have video on demand at any time, and every Monday we will post a new one at 4 o'clock Eastern. See you next week.
you have an idea for the Philanthropy Show? Contact us via our website or email us at tps@myvideovoice.com.